What is up, everybody? Welcome to the second part of this three-part Euro 2024 preview series here on Touchline Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content going up on the YouTube channel. First part of the series was kind of a group preview, breaking down the few things to know about every team heading in. This second part is all about storylines. So as we look at the tournament as a whole, these are the five things that really stand out to me in terms of kind of what is going to shape the narrative and tell the story of this tournament. The first thing, and I feel like we're not thinking maybe as much about this as we should, is that this could be the last major international tournament for some really big names. Never know for sure. Obviously, you've got a World Cup coming in 2 years. But there are three players in particular I'm thinking about here. The first one is Cristiano Ronaldo. You just don't know. And that's an awfully, awfully good Portugal team that, quite frankly, does not need him. And there's a strong case they're better without him. We'll have that conversation as the tournament goes on. But who knows where things are in 2 years? This could be his last major tournament with Portugal. Number two, Luka Modric. Seems to be a year-by-year situation at this point, whether he continues at Real Madrid, where he goes. Retirement is always a possibility. So I feel like I would even go so far as to say likely that this is the last major international tournament we're going to see Luka Modric for Croatia. And then the other one is Robert Lewandowski, who in this era of Messi and Ronaldo, and his prime kind of got overshadowed by those two, but there wasn't a moment where he might have been the best player in the world for a season. Obviously, he is one of the best players of this generation. I would argue the best pure goal scorer of this generation. Again, who knows what things look like? It's no guarantee that Poland, qualifies for the 2026 World Cup. Where is Robert Lewandowski at that point? Just a lot of question marks. So those three guys in particular, Cristiano Ronaldo, Luka Modric, Robert Lewandowski, this could be their final opportunity at a major tournament. And when you're talking about Ronaldo and Modric, these are really good teams that can make a deep run in this tournament. Not necessarily the case, or at least you wouldn't expect Poland to make a deep run, but this is also Lewandowski's opportunity to kind of recapture his magic after a rough spell at Barcelona. Can he sort of carry this Poland team by himself to a semifinal or something like that? So that's the first thing for me. Is we've got some all-time great players who are legends of this generation. Modric has won every possible trophy a bazillion times. They don't need anything else to cement their legacies, but this might be the last time we see them in this major tournament environment. Number two, I'm just making this redemption. And specifically, I'm thinking about two teams here. And it's interesting because these are, generally speaking, the consensus two favorites heading into this tournament, and that's England and France. England lost on penalties at Wembley in the Euro 2020 final played in 2021. France lost World Cup final to Argentina. These two teams probably have the best two squads in the world. On the England side, this group and Gareth Southgate is still trying to win a trophy, trying to win a tournament, and finally end this streak on the men's side of the long wait to actually win a major tournament. France, on the other hand, obviously has the World Cup. But France also has some really disappointing losses in here, and some coming really close but not getting the job done, also known as the last World Cup, as an example. And so we're entering this expecting these two teams to be the best of the best. And England, obviously, can this generation of players win something? Can Gareth Southgate win something with this group that has had so much success? And on the France side, if they don't get the job done here, and you've had some really good tournaments, one massive success, some not so good tournaments, if this goes poorly, does that change the way that we kind of view this group because they have been so loaded? And you feel like they could have gotten more out of it. Is that unfair? There are just a lot of questions. So the idea of the teams that lost the final, that came up just short of the last two major tournaments, entering this one as the favorites, is really, really interesting to me. Number 3, always talking about the emerging stars. You can also throw kind of the transfer speculation in here. Who are the players that have great tournaments that turn those into moves in the summer transfer window? Who are the players that kind of introduce themselves to the larger soccer fan base with more attention on the sport because of the global, even though it's a European tournament, the global nature of these international tournaments. So I've got a list of names here that I'm potentially thinking about. And it's not that these players are bursting onto the scene and that you probably have never heard of them before, but I'm thinking about players who can become household names because of this tournament. You know, kind of what Kylian Mbappe did a while back. And I'm also thinking about players on big-time teams that have aspirations of winning this tournament. So starting with England, you can pick a few different players, but Kobbie Mainoo and Adam Wharton. Kobbie Mainoo is probably going to play an important role. He is now one of Manchester United's most important players. Nobody really knew who he was at the beginning of the season, but he was really good, absolutely earned his spot on this team. That's kind of what I'm talking about here. It's not that he's an unknown commodity, but he hasn't gotten to that kind of international stardom yet. And Adam Wharton has barely played in the Premier League, but he has been so impressive that he made this squad and could end up being one of the breakout stars of this tournament because of how excited everybody is about him. France, pair of PSG guys. Warren Zaire-Emery, to me, also fits this description to a T. Obviously, played in the Champions League. Starter for PSG. It's not that he hasn't played at a high level. But can he carve out an important role for himself in this France team and kind of elevate him to that next level? The other one is Bradley Barcola. Don't expect him to get as much playing time, but more of a role player for PSG. Obviously starts a lot, but he's not one of the first names you think of. Can he make an impact for France and kind of make a name for himself? Spain, Lamine Yamal. With everything going on at Barcelona, you don't always think about his potential as the kind of the first storyline with that club because of the financial issues and the manager situation and all of that. But this guy is sensational. He's going to play an important role for Spain. If Spain end up winning this tournament, making it to the final, he's probably going to be part of the reason why. And we might leave this tournament talking about him a little bit differently, even though obviously he's one of the most exciting young players in the world, one of the most valuable young players in the world already. Then Germany. Two guys, kind of different categories, but along the same lines. The first one is Florian Wirtz. Again, a guy who's been around, high-level player, just won the Bundesliga with Bayer Leverkusen, has gotten linked to all kinds of other clubs. It's not like he needs this tournament to get a big move. But he's another guy, hasn't really done it on the international stage, hasn't gotten all that many opportunities, where I feel like he has ascended into a different level or status of player heading into this tournament. So what role does he play for Germany? To me, he's going to be one of the most important players because they got to find ways to score goals. That's what he does. And then the other was Jamal Musiala. I am a big Jamal Musiala guy. Again, he's been starting for Bayern Munich. It's not like he's an unknown commodity. But he hasn't really had his breakout international tournament. That's the other part of this I'm kind of looking at. And if this German team's going to live up to its potential, those two guys are probably going to play starring roles. And so that's why I have them in this category, where it's not necessarily under the radar people that become names. It's sort of the names that have been around, early 20s, a little bit younger in some cases, but that kind of take the next step in their development and their international awareness, their status within the larger soccer world because of what they do in this tournament. The fourth thing for me, these last two are kind of similar to each other. Are there players who use this tournament as a way to bounce back from disappointing club seasons? You can go down a very long list. Here are just some of the things that I am thinking about. Barcelona players. There are a couple clubs that I'm just kind of lumping in here. But specifically, João Cancelo, João Felix for Portugal. Bring him in. Doesn't go particularly well. Could even call it more of a disaster than just not going well. What can they do for Portugal? And then also the aforementioned Robert Lewandowski. Not a good season at all. Does he have some kind of magic that he can go on a tear for a couple weeks here, for a month, and do something special with Poland? Scotland. Scott McTominay, Andy Robertson. Robertson battled some injuries and just didn't have his best season. Obviously, the bar is very high for that because of how good of a player he is. But it wasn't like he was at his best. And then McTominay came up with some really big moments for Manchester United. Also was not consistently starting. But whenever he puts on that Scotland shirt, he just makes things happen and really, really delivers. Can those two guys kind of put, and McTominay has done, to be fair, done this really, really well, kind of putting together everything going on with their club situations aside and just make it happen for their country, because Scotland desperately need both of them to have good tournaments. Another guy, Mateo Kovacic, played a role, not a huge one, for Manchester City. That's kind of the reality when you go to that club. But that's a loaded Croatian midfield. He's going to have a lot of responsibility there. How is he handling all of that? Is he ready to go, taking on a bigger role for his country? The other Manchester City player I'll throw in there is John Stones, who is kind of assumed to be a lockdown starter for England at this point because of all the injuries, and was not that at Manchester City. Is he ready to take on that added responsibility? The other two clubs I'll throw out there, Bayern Munich, outside of Harry Kane, that's the Germany guys specifically, but also you can kind of expand that as well. Obviously, not a lot of players had great seasons for Bayern Munich. What role do they play, and can that kind of core help Germany actually deliver at a major tournament and build off of all this positive momentum they've got? Also, players belonging to Ajax, with the train wreck that went on there. You've got, scattered across a few countries, but specifically some Dutch players from Ajax there, being a Dutch club. What do those guys what are they able to give their countries? And then the last one, Ukraine. Alexander Zinchenko, Mikhail Mudryk. There was some good from Mudryk, definitely not living up to the expectations. Zinchenko playing a limited role for Arsenal at times. Those two guys are huge parts of that Ukraine team. Zinchenko plays a completely different position for that Ukraine team. If Ukraine's going to make some noise here, those two guys are going to be the center of it. Haven't had the greatest club seasons. Can they put that behind them and deliver in a big way for their countries? And then finally, similar to that, but can some of the countries coming off of bad World Cups regroup and make this tournament a much better experience? Denmark, Germany, Belgium, Serbia. all lost in the group stage of the World Cup. That's not even talking to teams like Italy, who didn't even make it. You can throw them in there too. Denmark, Serbia are teams I'm really, really high on. Maybe not so much Denmark at this point. Heading into the World Cup, I really like Denmark. Serbia, I love their talent. Again, maybe a little bit better at the World Cup in terms of the timing and where they are with players in their careers, because you've got some veterans there. But to me, both really, really disappointing at the World Cup. Can they turn that around? And I could see either of them making it to the semifinals. I can talk myself into that. Can they actually put that kind of run together? Belgium. Okay, you've got this combination of players from the golden generation who have been around for a decade. You have some exciting young players, specifically Jeremy Doku, coming in to kind of refresh a little bit. So there is some nice balance there. Is the top end talent what it was 5-10 years ago? No. But this is still a really good team. This team still has Kevin De Bruyne on it. And if your team has Kevin De Bruyne, I can't rule you out. He is that good. And obviously, he's got plenty of talent around him still. So, do they have one last run to put themselves in position with a little bit more youth to get to a semifinal, give them a chance in a final, something like that? And then your host, Germany. It has been disastrous major tournaments here. The vibes are much more positive with what Julian Nagelsmann's been able to do. This team is very, very talented. Certainly they can win the whole thing. Not going to be picked to do so, but you would not be surprised. That's a lot of expectations there for a country that has not delivered or come close to delivering on expectations these past couple tournaments. So there's a lot of pressure on Germany to make this happen. Those are my 5 storylines. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to check out the other videos in this Euros preview series, and I'll see you next time.